Good evening, everybody. Hi there. My name is Wanda Colo. I'm the Director of Sustainable Operations and Construction Management here at the zoo. And welcome. We're glad to have you here on this beautiful evening. And I'm thrilled to introduce Karin Stratton, who's joining us here from Monterey Bay Aquarium, where she is the Seafood Watch Partnership Program Manager. And in her job, she engages zoos and aquariums, various cultural institutions and restaurants throughout the country about sustainable seafood, what it is, how do we know we're procuring it, how do we talk to our guests about it and get them engaged as well. Karin is also involved in various committees and groups within the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, most recently serving as a member of the Green Scientific Advisory Group and also the Vaquita Task Force within the Saving Species from Extinction Initiative. And we are very lucky to have her here in town because she just presented this week. We actually had St. Louis Zoo hosted a conference for, it's called the Biannual Conference of the Nutrition Advisory Group and Zoo and Wildlife Nutrition Foundation. And there was also a vet conference that was happening at the same time. So it was vets from all over the country, from other zoos and aquariums, wildlife vets, and she presented at that conference as well. So we were just lucky to snag her for another day, and she's been extremely kind and provided a lot of special presentations to our staff today to kind of teach them more about all things seafood, sustainable seafood, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy her talk. So it's a small group, so we will certainly have time for question and answers. And yeah, enjoy the talk.
What a pleasure to be here tonight. Your zoo is gorgeous. It is so beautiful, and I not only got to enjoy it all day Tuesday and Tuesday evening with the conference, but all day today as well in between my trainings, and it really is a gem in your backyard. So how lucky are you? Once again, my name is Karin Stratton. I am the Seafood Watch Partnership Program Manager at the Monterey Bay Aquarium in Monterey, California. And I'm curious, how many of you have been to our aquarium in Monterey? Oh, quite a few of you. How exciting. Well, thank you for your visit, and for those of you who haven't seen it yet, we'd love to have you come see us. We're Central California, about 2 hours south of San Francisco Drive, and about 6 hours north of Los Angeles. It's a really big, long state, so that's where we are, right on the coast. And tonight, I'm going to be talking to you about sustainable seafood, because our program turns 20 this month. It's really exciting. On October 20th, Seafood Watch turns 20. So we launched this program on October 20th of 1999. And we started out as a very modest consumer-facing program. The little guides that you have in your hand, we just wanted people to look at that with the stoplight approach, the green best choice, the yellow good alternative, and the red avoid. We just wanted them to look at those seafood guides and just think about asking maybe just one question about the seafood that they were picking out at a grocery store or selecting at a restaurant. If not one question, maybe two. That's all we were hoping for. But this wonderful side benefit was happening, and businesses were listening, and they were making changes to their internal seafood buying policies. And that actually caused a whole cascade of wonderful conservation events, which I'll be talking to you about tonight. But before we get into all of that, I just want to explain how we get our red, yellow, and green recommendations, because the Seafood Watch program is deeply rooted in science. So it's got the strongest scientific background of any sustainable seafood program on the planet. We are known for our rigorous science, very robust. And when it comes to wild-caught fish, these are the standards or the very filters that we use to get those red, yellow, and green choices of seafood. Wild fisheries is just another fancy way of saying wild caught fish. A fishery, it's kind of a fancy word, fancy science word, but a fishery basically means fish caught in a particular geographic location using very specific gear by people who want those fish. Okay, so that is a fishery. So you can have different fisheries all over the world for different kinds of fish. And as you can see, our criteria deal with 4 different topics here. First is the impact on the stock. What would it mean to that population if you took one fish out of that population? What kind of impact would it have on the population by removing one fish? 10 fish, 1,000 fish. Okay, so that's what that means. Impacts on other species. We call that bycatch, the animals caught by accident. Even if you're targeting one type of fish, does the gear that you use catch all these other animals that tend to be wasted or thrown overboard, dead or dying? And then criterion 3, management effectiveness. Is there management in place? Are there policies to look at those populations and manage them over time, especially with environmental, what's the word I'm looking for? Environmental inconsistencies like climate and when we get negative weather effects. That can affect different populations as well. And then criterion 4, habitat and ecosystem impacts. Does the gear that's being used, does it hurt the surrounding environment? So bottom trawling, for instance, can be done quite sustainably in an ocean-friendly way if it's a sandy seafloor bottom that is resilient to a short period of bottom trawling. But that's not the same for all benthic or bottom habitats. Some are not resilient. Some are very sensitive and have animals and corals that won't bounce back. And so those are the standards that we use for our wild-caught fish. We also assess farmed fish, also known as aquaculture. And you can see that the standards are very, very different. So my question to you is, do you see any overlap with land-based farming? Any overlap out there? Anything that you have to deal with land-based farming? Yeah, there's quite a bit of overlap. You got it. And so just like farming on land can be done responsibly or irresponsibly, the same goes for fish farming. It can be done responsibly or irresponsibly, sustainable or unsustainably. And I'm happy to say that just in the last 3 to 5 years, aquaculture, or fish farming in general, has made great strides in positive directions. In fact, if you count the number of farmed species on your red list versus the number of farmed species on your green list, I think you will be pleasantly surprised with the outcome. So go ahead and do that if you'd like. Now, Seafood Watch is made up of 25 staff at this time, 20 years into the program. Half of those staff are scientists, and they're scientists who either study wild fisheries or they're scientists who study aquaculture. The other half of our team is actually made up of people like myself who work to engage different audiences with the message of sustainable seafood. Actually, I'm going to go back for just a moment. Nope, I'm going to go forward for just a moment. Here we go. Our largest platform when it comes to program engagement, of course, is social media. And there are many different ways that you can follow Seafood Watch, so I invite you to do that. This was the slide I was looking for. My work primarily is with the Seafood Watch conservation partners, and St. Louis Zoo is one of them. Hooray! We love the work that the St. Louis Zoo does, because who would expect ocean conservation messaging at a zoo in Missouri? It's a very unexpected message, and I think that's why I like it so much here, because you might hear it at sea lions or at penguins. Basically animals, stingrays as well, animals that are eating seafood, they make this beautiful connection between the seafood being fed to the animals, it being sustainable, and you know what? We can choose sustainable seafood too, and here's how. And so that's the very tool that you have in your hand tonight. We also have an app which is a free download. It's called Seafood Watch, and that's a great way to learn more about the seafood that you can buy in a restaurant or in a market. Now, the St. Louis Zoo is, as I mentioned, a valued Seafood Watch conservation partner. And as such, they actually are very good about meeting the requirements of being a partner of Seafood Watch. They distribute the consumer guide that you got tonight. They promote the app. They host sustainable seafood events and other outreach activities, like talking about it during their daily feeding programs. They work to source sustainable seafood on site, and they help complete an end-of-year partner survey, which gives me really great metrics. One example is that their programmatic reach of all conservation partners is over 100 million people, so really impressive. And of course, over 3 million of those people visit this lovely zoo every year. We also engage the chef audience, such an important audience because chefs really bring food to life. They make food fun. They make it delicious, and they are trendsetters in the culinary community. So they really help guide us in terms of what we should have in our kitchens and what we should be ordering when we're at restaurants. And so we definitely engage the chef audience as well. We work with major seafood buyers. These are the businesses that buy huge volumes of seafood. In 2018, I'm happy to say that Red Lobster signed on as a partner of Seafood Watch, a major buyer. And although they're not going to be changing their seafood inventory overnight, it will actually take 5 years, they're working on that transition now. And that's really exciting because this is the largest seafood buyer on the planet with 700 restaurants. So we want to help them make that transition to sustainable seafood. The reason it is taking 5 years is because of the global contracts they have and the volume that they have. And so I am excited about the work that they're doing, and we should reward those good performers by going there. Now, it'll be about 2023 before you can go there and order anything you want, guilt-free. So at this time, you still need to ask those good questions. What is it? How is it caught? Where is it from? That sort of thing. But they are doing the good work, and that's the great news. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Seafood Watch started out as a very modest consumer-facing program. And 20 years later, we are now global in scope. But there's a really good reason for that. And that's because a very large percentage of our seafood here in the United States is imported every year. So I'm curious, what are your guesses out there in terms of what is the percentage of our seafood imported into this country every year? Any ideas? 80 is a great guess. I'm going to have you go a little higher. It's over 90%. Good job, both of you. Great job. Yeah, it's over 90% of our seafood is imported, which is kind of mind-boggling for me when I think about our beautiful coastline in this country and how large it is. But that's the reality. And so Seafood Watch works in places where the bigger volumes of seafood are coming from. For instance, shrimp. Shrimp is the #1 consumed seafood in the United States. Americans eat 4 pounds per year per person. So it's really important that we look at sourcing sustainable shrimp if we can't supply ourselves with enough of our own domestic shrimp. So right now, Seafood Watch is doing work in Southeast Asia with shrimp farms and helping them to go from a red rated avoid product to a green best choice rated product, 20,000 shrimp farms. And so this gives you an idea of how we're trying to move the needle in the right direction. The other popular seafoods in the United States, #2 and 3, are tuna and salmon. And they're always vying for second and third place and sometimes swapping. But Americans eat about 2.5 pounds per person per year of tuna and salmon. Again, shrimp being #1. So because so much of our seafood is imported, Seafood Watch does work in those places where that seafood is coming from. This is our theory of change slide. And there's a lot to it, many different levels. You can see where we started on the left and where we are today. But I like to sum this up in 8 words. So if you would, help me count. Consumers ask, businesses respond, change happens, oceans thrive. Okay? Consumers ask, businesses respond, change happens, oceans thrive. So most of the work that we're doing now is at this level, working with governments, countries all around the world, helping them to improve their regulations and policies regarding fishing and fish farming. As it turns out, the United States has the most strict of the fishing and farming regulations. So 9 times out of 10, when you can find a domestic seafood product, 9 times out of 10, it will be considered sustainable or ocean friendly. But we're not done yet. So this is the global performance of where seafood is globally in terms of what has been assessed for sustainability and what has not. Sustainability meaning ocean friendly. So there's a nice big chunk of green over there. There's a little bit of yellow, not too much red, which is great. The blue represents eco-certified. Eco-certification in a nutshell is similar to the organic label. Brand doesn't matter, but that certification does. And it's somewhat similar in the seafood world. However, Seafood Watch only defers to certain kinds of eco-certifications for certain species. And all of that is on the app and the website. So the guides that I gave you tonight are great, but they're really only a snapshot of the over 2,000 recommendations that we have. So there were probably 60 or 70 on your pocket guide, which is, again, great little reference to remind you that you can make those good choices for the ocean. But to really drill down to the other options out there, the app is a free download, Seafood Watch, and seafoodwatch.org is another great resource. But as you can see, we've only assessed less than half of the seafood out there. So we still have a lot of work to do. Again, we're 20 years in. This is good news, but we're not done yet. So what can we do? Well, I know for most of us in the room, I know one gentleman does not eat seafood, but I know for a lot of people we do. And even if we don't eat it, we probably know people that do, or we feed it to our pets. And so we can all make these great choices when we're shopping and dining out and looking for that delicious meal from a restaurant or something to cook at something to bring home and cook from a grocery store. So how do we assess our seafood? Well, these are the criteria that we use. I met with zoo staff from their food service department as well as their animal nutrition department this morning, and we talked about how if they want to assess their own seafood for sustainability, this is the information that they're going to need. So they're going to need to know what it is. Market name, common name is great, but it can be misinterpreted, so it's always good to know what the scientific name is. Where it was caught or farmed, location is really important. Is it domestic from in our country, or is it imported from outside of our country? And if you can drill down to the state level, great. If you can drill down to the ocean, that's really good too, knowing which ocean it's from. The catch or farming method, what kind of gear was used to catch that fish? Also really good to know. And if it's a farmed fish, how is that fish farmed? And again, fish farming has really made positive strides in the last 3 to 5 years, which is great news for our ocean. And then volume. Volume is not necessary for assessment, but it's great for me to know volume of what the St. Louis Zoo is doing so that I can get a glimpse into the trend of our industry. This is actually the tool that I ask partners to use when they're assessing the seafood for their food service and catering or their animal nutrition departments. It's separate from Seafood Watch. It's called fishchoice.com, and it's a free online platform which will really help to provide you with a dashboard of metrics. So for instance, if we look at what Monterey Bay Aquarium is sourcing for their animal diets, this is a nice little snapshot. You can see that we're not sourcing any red rated avoid items of seafood for our animal diets. We are sourcing as much green as we can. But sadly, most of the food that we feed our animals falls into the yellow and the unrated category. So there's a lot of homework that we need to do. And one of the reasons that I'm working with conservation partners like the St. Louis Zoo is so I can collect metrics on what they're using so that we can prioritize the assessment of these species so that we have a red, a yellow, or a green rating for them. So that slide before was species item, so by individual species, what we're sourcing, and this is by volume. So we source about almost, not quite 10,000 pounds, just a little over 9,000 pounds of seafood a month just for our aquarium. There are over 230 Association of Zoo and Aquarium accredited zoos and aquariums, which is only 10% of the zoos and aquariums in the United States, so really just a drop in the bucket. So my guess is we're actually sourcing a lot more seafood than we think we are, and it's really important for us to know what those sustainability assessments are. Fish Choice will also give you this great readout. Not only will it produce the pie graphs that I just showed you, but it will also produce a little report card for you. And so this is what it looks like to do that assessment on Fish Choice, should you have any ties into the food service world or animal nutrition world. These are all the partners that I worked with over the summer, the conservation partners of Seafood Watch, who supplied their metrics for me, their seafood metrics, and we were able to get a glimpse into what the industry was looking like. It's not too far off from Monterey Bay Aquarium's assessment. You can see that it's 28 different organizations contributed their metrics. We've got the green, we've got the yellow, just a little bit of red, but again, the biggest piece of pie is the unrated seafood category. And the reason for that is that the animals in our care are eating things that you're not going to see on a restaurant menu. Night smelt, silver sides, sand eels. And so even though Seafood Watch has done sustainability assessments for 85% of the seafood that you'll find in the marketplace or restaurant, the animal diet seafood just doesn't quite fit into that category. So again, room for improvement. And here is the partner assessment by volume. So the one before this was by species item, and then here it is by volume. So 198,000 pounds, almost 200,000 pounds per month sourced by those 28 partners. So definitely big volumes of seafood for us to be considering. The reason I am most interested in this project is because most of the food that we eat is right in here. So if you like salmon or trout, they're up here in the predator zone. If you like shrimp or calamari, that's right here in the forage fish zone. And yet most of the food that we're feeding the animals in our care at an aquarium or a zoo are in this category right here, the forage fish category. As I mentioned earlier, this level of the food chain is very susceptible to population crashes, either due to fishing or overfishing, or just very severe weather episodes can cause their populations to dip quite a bit as well. And they are right in the middle. So they're not the plankton, they're not the little tiny animals and plants, but instead they're the energy transfer up to the higher part of the food chain. So when the forage fish populations actually go down, that affects what happens both below and above, and of course on land as well, because of so many different populations around the world relying on seafood. So we definitely want to always be thinking about what we're ordering at a restaurant, what we're buying in a market, or what we're feeding the animals in our care. So here are a couple fun ways that partners may talk about Seafood Watch. Again, as I mentioned earlier, making that terrific connection between the animals eating seafood and feeding them sustainable seafood as often as they can, and the choices that we make every day. I love this sign from the sea lion exhibit here. Holy mackerel, California sea lions can eat over 25 pounds of food per day. They primarily eat fish, squid, and the occasional clam. So it just gives you an idea of volume. And yet these are animals that are not working as hard for their food, so they may not need to eat as much, but they still need to eat a lot. We've got some great tools in Seafood Watch for you to enjoy as a consumer or if you're in the classroom. And this is my current favorite. It's an interactive restaurant, if you will, where you can order from a menu and it will serve up a digital meal. It's a lot of fun and I highly recommend it. It's on seafoodwatch.org. We had fun playing with it at the zoo today, and it's just a great way to order a seafood meal and then hear about whether it was a good choice or maybe how you could have made a better choice. So again, that's on seafoodwatch.org under businesses and organizations, and then tools under that. This comes in both English and Spanish and Portuguese. The partners that I work with are so creative about how they share the message of sustainable seafood with their guests. You can see lots of different ways of them sharing the message here, from a diver in the water, not talking about it, but enlarging one of the guides that you have, laminating it, and then showing it to the audience, to an after-hours event devoted to sustainable seafood, or just talking with visitors by the different exhibits where seafood-eating animals might live, and having fun with a selfie frame right here. Fish face for sustainable seafood. October is National Seafood Month, and Seafood Watch always has a photo challenge every year. These are a couple of submissions from last year from our conservation partner, the Santa Barbara Zoo. This is a fun one. We highlighted fish tacos one week, and so sure enough, they submitted a fish taco for their otters. And then during bivalve week, they submitted clams on the half shell. And I'm not sure that you can read this text in the back, so I'll read it for you. It says, we call this one Sustainable Sophistication. For this week's Seafood Month Challenge, Chef Trent, who is their animal nutritionist, prepared a delicious arrangement of farm-raised Pacific little neck clams on the half shell, a best choice rating by Seafood Watch. Garnished with peppers, cilantro, and a twist of lemon, a meal fit for a semi-aquatic but entirely spoiled Cayman lizard. And that was Santa Barbara Zoo. Really fun. This is Chef Trent Barnhart, again, animal nutritionist at Santa Barbara Zoo. That's what the fish taco looked like before the otter got to it. And here's the otter thoroughly enjoying it. So just a fun way to share the message of sustainable seafood, both on-site at the zoo and through social media. And so we encourage you to participate in that as well. And I'll show you what our hashtag is in just a moment. So before we wrap up our time together tonight and take questions, I just want to let you know that, first of all, by supporting the zoo and being here tonight, you're helping so much. As I mentioned earlier, your zoo is really such a gem to have in your backyard, and the conservation and sustainability work that they do is truly impressive and amazing, and it's really been a joy to be here. But of course, they can't do it alone, and that's how we as individuals can really make a difference. Businesses are listening. They want to know what consumers want. A business won't survive and thrive if it's not meeting and beating consumer demand. And so asking for sustainable seafood, even if it's just a simple 5-word question like, do you sell sustainable seafood, will get them thinking about that. And if they don't know what sustainable is, just say, well, sustainable is a way to describe an ocean-friendly seafood. And I've got a little guide here that I can show you, which will help you better understand what it is that I'm talking about. So using the guide or the app is a great tool. Affecting change in the right direction is terrific. If we can move the needle towards sourcing more sustainable seafood, we can complete that donut graph that I showed you earlier so that we can have more seafood assessed and available. Of course, we want to do all of that with the environment in mind. And so we encourage you to join us during this National Seafood Month. We are #SeafoodMonthChallenge. And there's more information about what we're doing each week in October on our website, which is seafoodwatch.org. So I encourage you to join us with this special month and also our 20th anniversary month. And with that, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy weeks to come to the zoo on this beautiful Thursday night. And I'd love to answer any questions you have. Yes, sir. Absolutely. In fact, did you get a seafood guide? You did. You'll notice, hopefully, that there are Great Lake fish on the Central U.S. Guide only. So the guides that we make are regional, and your Central U.S. Guide is the only one with the Great Lakes fish on it. Tell me what you mean by fresh. Fresh versus frozen? Oh, freshwater versus marine. Okay, freshwater versus saltwater. What are your concerns? Yeah, I would say use the guide. The guide's going to guide you towards what to buy and what not to buy. And of course, the yellow is that's where a little bit of concern is. So if you can buy off the green best choices list, then you're doing a good thing for really all water bodies. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Other questions? Yes. Yeah, so your question is about shellfish and the cholesterol involved. So I'm not a nutritionist, even though I hung out with animal nutritionists all week. I'm not a nutritionist, so I really can't speak to that. What I can speak to is that the real shellfish, the mussels, the clams, the oysters, the scallops, your mussels especially, are very high in omega-3s. And omega-3s are really one of the best things our bodies can assimilate for brain health and nerve health and all kinds of health. And mussels are one of the highest sustainably farmed or harvested seafoods out there with omega-3s. Yeah. But I would talk to your doctor about the cholesterol and concerns about shrimp and crab. So, Catfish is a great sustainably farmed fish option. It's U.S. farmed catfish and U.S. farmed rainbow trout are both excellent choices. Rainbow trout also has a really nice amount of omega-3 fatty acids as well. And catfish are eating mostly grain byproducts when they're farmed. So they're not the bottom feeders that you might be thinking of. Yeah. But both excellent choices, both make great fish tacos. Yeah. So if you're not a fish fan, a fish taco is a great way to enjoy fish in a different way. I'm not from here. Great. Oh, good. Bristol's. Okay. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Well, feel free to ask them about, serving sustainable seafood. It'd be interesting to see what they have to say. Yep. Yeah, great. Thank you. In the back. Oh, I'm sorry. It's hard to see you out there. Yes, please, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's possible. Since we don't work with those chains, it's hard to say. But of course, it's all about economics, right? So if they just need a white fish for their whatever it is that they're serving, there are probably different species that will fit that category, and they're probably going to buy whatever is most economically feasible. But again, since we don't work with those chains, it's hard to say. But it is concerning that most of us as zoos and aquariums are feeding capelin to our animals. Capelin is a forage fish, and as you saw, is right in the middle of the food chain, very susceptible to population crashes. So there is a little bit of competition between people and the animals in our care because capelin roe is highly sought after in the sushi world. And so there's a little bit of competition there between food for animals and food for people. Yeah, I was in New Orleans recently and I had to look that up because I wasn't really sure. And my understanding, if I remember correctly, is that there are red options that are coming from China, but if it's a domestic option, it's a yellow good alternative. Yeah. Great questions. Thank you. Other questions? Yes, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yep. And that is still happening, but not to the degree that it used to. So that's the good news. So what you're talking about in terms of the salmon farming and the shrimp farming, those stories have been around for a long time. And yes, it's still happening, but so many of the farming operations for both shrimp and salmon have done things to make everything that you just mentioned better. So they've actually decreased the number of animals in their farms so that they don't need to use as many chemicals. And they're doing things to mitigate any kind of habitat damage around the farms, using less antibiotics in the feed because they don't need to use as many. For salmon farming, chemical use is really what puts some of them in the red. But the good news is that we can't put just farm salmon in general on our red avoid list anymore because so many operations have been upgraded to yellow and in some cases green. So really, as consumers, we've really pushed for that to happen, and I'm happy to say that we're seeing the needle move in the right direction. The consumer guide that I handed you tonight isn't going to give you the nitty-gritty, granular level of information that you're looking for in terms of, who should I be buying my farm salmon from or what kind of farm salmon should I be buying. But our app and our website will have that company-level information. Yeah. Did I answer your question? Okay. Thank you. Yes? That's a great question. Let me see if I can repeat that. How can we get the smaller chains that are not Red Lobster to join? Mm-hmm. I'm gonna ask you to take care of that. And I say that because it's really up to each and every one of us to let the places where we dine and the places where we shop know what it is that we're willing to put money down for, good money. And every time we open our wallets, we are voting with our dollars. And so we may not be working with those places right now, but that doesn't mean that you can't. So by all means, have your app, have your card, and ask for the things that you want. And I think you'll be really surprised with what you'll find out. One thing that we ask our conservation partners to do, which of course St. Louis Zoo is one of, is to consider working with local businesses to have them join Seafood Watch. And so you'll be hearing more about that in the future. Yeah, so thank you. What a great question. Yes? Sadly, we are. We are. In the southern Gulf of Maine, we are seeing temperatures rise, and as a result, lobsters are suffering from a soft shell disease, which is compromising their immune system, which has caused their population to plummet. So yeah, it is problematic. We are seeing how a changing sea, change as in temperature, is affecting an animal like a lobster. And I think our crustaceans and anything with a shell is going to have a really hard time in the future because as the oceans change in temperature and also acidity, anything with a shell is going to have a very hard time maintaining that shell. As the ocean becomes more acidic over time, that acid reacts with the shell, producing a carbonic acid. So it's going to be very, very difficult for your lobsters, your crabs, your mussels, your oysters, your scallops, which of course Maine is known for all of those, but especially lobster. We're going to see some big changes in our lifetime, and so it's definitely concerning for us. Part of the lobster population in Maine, the wild-caught lobster population, is now a red avoid listed item for that very reason. So if they're coming from the southern Gulf of Maine, they're a red rated avoid. But in higher, colder water, that population is still considered healthy and sustainable. Yeah, great question. Good for you for watching that and taking in that information. Yes? Mm-hmm. It's going to be both. It's going to be both. But you're right. The keratin is different from a carbonate shell. But I think that these are animals that are less resilient than vertebrates and more sensitive to environmental change. Yeah. So great question. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. What would you like to know about tilapia? Tilapia is another one of those great choices for farmed fish if it's farmed responsibly and sustainably. So there are some tilapia farms that don't make the cut and have that red avoid rating, but there's some that are yellow and a lot that are green. So again, it just depends on the kind of farming that's happening, and luckily we've done that homework for you. So all you have to do is use the guide or the app. And I believe tilapia, farmed tilapia, is one of those fish where you're going to have a lot of choices. You're going to have red, yellow, and green to choose from. Yeah. All the way in the back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for asking about that. The Marine Stewardship Council, or MSC, is known as a type of eco-certification. So you'll notice actually here that we have an eco-certification right here. That's the eco-cert. And then on the donut graph, we have some eco-certifications on here too. On the donut graph, that was the blue at the top, that 6% blue at the top. So what Seafood Watch did several years back is we did a benchmarking study to find which of the eco-certifications out there would be equivalent to a Seafood Watch rating, since we're known for the most rigorous science. And we did the benchmarking, and we found that many of them are equivalent to a Seafood Watch Yellow or better. So that information won't be on the guide because there just isn't enough real estate. There's only room for 60 or 70 recommendations. But you will find the eco-certification equivalent on the app as well as seafoodwatch.org. So Marine Stewardship Council is one eco-certification which we defer to a lot, but not all the time. So it is best to check the app or the website. And I say not all the time because, for instance, Orange Roughy is a red avoid in any category in any place around the world for Seafood Watch. And Marine Stewardship Council disagrees with that. And that's fine. We agree to disagree. For us, we're very concerned about the seamount habitat, very sensitive seamount habitat where orange roughy are bottom trawled. It's a very diverse, it's kind of like the rainforest underwater. It's kind of like a coral reef, but it's more of a mountainous underwater habitat with very unique biodiversity and deep sea Gorgonian corals, which when bottom trawled probably will never recover properly. And so we disagree on that. But long story short, check the app, check the website, and those tools will show you which eco-certifications we defer to. I'm not sure if I can pull up the website here, but if my friend Kyle in back wants to show me how, I'm happy to pull up the website and show you how we can look for that. Oh, okay. No problem then. I can always, if you want to come up, I can show you on my app. Yeah. Other questions? Right here. Mm-hmm. You know, when it comes to our government and fishing and fish farming regulations and policies, we have the most strict regulations on the planet. So by that standard, we're doing pretty well. Is it enough? It's better than everyone else. But could we be doing more? Sure, we absolutely could be doing more. I mean, we have seafood slavery in our own country. It's more rampant in other places around the world, but it is happening in, the parts of our country that are islands. So could we be doing more? Sure. There's always room for improvement. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mentioned that we vote with our wallets every time we open up our wallet. And I think when we really actually do vote, it's really important for us to speak what is important to us as individuals through our vote. So if that is a concern for you, then it's really important to have your vote reflect that concern. We've got a big year coming up next year, and it'll be important for us to be considering the very things that you're talking about. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Yes, sir. Yes. What does that term seafood slavery mean? Sadly, there is rampant slavery associated with wild-caught seafood and farmed seafood all around the world. And so one thing that Seafood Watch has done is we have formed a seafood slavery risk assessment tool which businesses can use to inform them about which fisheries around the world are known to have slaves. And here's an example of what happens. Someone in a third world country will be told, you can make a lot of money in a month, more than you would in 5 years if you come with me now. And then they're taken out onto a boat and they're not brought back for years. And so that is what slavery looks like today. It's very sad, it's very unfortunate, but people do it because they don't have an alternative. There are instances in our own country, luckily not as rampant as other places in the world, but it is something that is happening. You're welcome to look at our tool. It's a public interfacing tool, Seafood Slavery Risk Assessment. Another tool that Seafood Watch has launched in the last year is a carbon tool, speaking to what you were talking about. And that carbon tool will tell you what it will take in terms of carbon intensity to go out, catch a fish, and bring it to dock, and what it will take to farm a fish and bring it to gate of that farm. Then there's a transport calculator built in, so you can figure out the food miles associated with it. And your transportation choices are ocean freighter, train, plane, or truck. So which do you think is the least carbon intensive of those four? Ocean freighter, train, plane, or truck? That's what I thought. That's what Wanda thought. It's actually the ocean freighter. It's the ocean freighter as the least carbon intensive form of transportation by volume. What's the most intensive form of transportation of those four? The plane. Yeah, the plane. Also, what's great about this tool is that you can overlay your land-based proteins with your seafood choices. You can look at soy, chicken, pork, beef, and lamb. So what do you think is your least carbon-intensive land-based protein? The soy, yeah. What do you think is the most carbon-intensive land-based protein? I thought it was beef too. Try again. No? It's the little lamb. It's the little lamb, yeah. So that's another great tool you can check out online. We used it at a climate summit for educators Friday night, and they were so excited to bring it back to their classroom. And so you can get to that through seafoodwatch.org. Any other questions? Yes. I'll take yours and then yours. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are we supposed to eat? Well, I really can't tell you what to eat, but I can give you the tools to make your own informed choices. One thing I will tell you about the carbon tool that was very eye-opening for me is that when I looked at the carbon intensity of anything with a heavy shell, a crab, or an oyster, or a clam, the carbon intensity of those animals was much higher because you're transporting a heavy shell. So these are things I never would have thought of. But luckily, we now have these tools so that we can make informed choices. Yes, it makes me want to eat dirt, but that's just not the reality of food options. But the good news is that we live in a country where we have choices and we have the information. We have the tools. So it's really important that we use them so we can make those informed choices. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Up front. How do you know which salmon to buy? You know, I think of salmon as a luxury. I do. I don't think of it as an everyday food because there is so much of it and so many different kinds that for me, it's a treat. I treat it as a treat because I want to buy the most sustainable option, which at this time is probably going to be, it may not be the most expensive, but it's going to be up there, right? But I want to savor that, and I want to support that choice. So salmon is not an everyday protein for me. It is a luxury and a treat, and I will pay for the more sustainable option. Trout is a great choice. Farmed U.S. rainbow trout, very, very reasonably priced. A close relative of the salmon, also high in omega-3s. I love U.S. farmed rainbow trout. Love it. And we'll often order that when I'm out at a restaurant. Yeah. Other questions? Well, gosh, great questions, everyone. Thank you so much. If you'd like to learn how to use the app, if I can show you how to use it and where the eco certifications are, I'd be happy to do that. Just come up front. Otherwise, thanks again, and safe travels home, and thank you for loving your zoo and the ocean.